So the continued uncertainty of XDefiant is brewing, with a few hopium theories out there that have gained some traction, but unfortunately, they aren't necessarily correct. And today I want to touch on that with a few things in XDefiant. First, discussing that new release rumor surrounding the game, but also rounding up a bit of some other hints that have happened recently, while at the end, giving you my ultimate thoughts on the potential timetable as we move towards now the middle of March. So as we go along, drop your thoughts down below, do me a favor and drop a like if you enjoy the video, and if you'd like to stay up to date with all things XDefiant, COD, Gray Zone Warfare, Delta Force, and a ton of other FPS content, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of that. And finally, make sure to check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage with code Espresso, linked down below, but more on that a little later. For now, let's take a look at the recent rumors of XDefiant's release and a few other things. So initially, I was honestly telling myself, hey, we're not going to be making any more XDefiant content until something really substantial comes along. Because right now, of course, we're in that limbo period. In theory, the game should be coming out soon, but we haven't heard anything officially, and the otherwise solid communication from the XDefiant team has since been sporadic at best since that initial delay at the end of last summer. Whether by Ubisoft and a publisher end sort of gag order or an individual choice, we don't know. But while I initially wasn't planning on an XDefiant video here in the content calendar coming up, I wanted to touch on this most recent rumor as a sort of don't get your hopes up for this one just yet, even though it does sound enticing type of thing. Recently, it was alleged that the game would become preloadable on March 30th, playable on March 31st for everyone who has Ubisoft Plus or whatever that premium membership is, and then the game would fully launch to everyone on April 4th. Now that sounds believable, right? At first glance at least, because it would mean that we're right on the precipice of an announcement, given that Mark Rubin has mentioned that the game won't be shadow dropped on some random day where they're just like, hey, play now, but also leads into the idea that we're kind of having to approach that window of Ubisoft's initial plans and that earning report backstop of March 31st. That yes, while the global launch is past that sort of initially planned backstop, it still does meet that criteria. A bit of a delay, but also not, if that makes sense. Now with that in particular, we do have to recognize initially that March 31st as a date, that's something we mentioned a few times from the beginning. It's not a solid backstop. That's not a guarantee that the game has to launch by that point, but rather from Ubisoft, it was a declaration of intent to launch in that window. Things are always subject to change and not guaranteed. But like those rumor and dates, that's kind of hopium, but also kind of makes sense in that degree. Now that proof of where the rumor came from was a hidden URL that was apparently to a launch trailer for the game, privated and held behind a few layers of whatever, but that's the basic gist of it here with this, where it was something that date was listed on the back end of some Ubisoft clerical items, but that's where this rumor all came from. Naturally, again, the hopium taking over, and because so many are anxious for it, first glance, that all checks out, so that means we should be getting ready to jump in, right? Unfortunately, no, and that's where we can debunk this. As Reddit user Bearded Ectomorph pointed out, the URL isn't linking to a trailer as initially alleged, but rather it's a log event endpoint, which, simple terms, if you were to go to this, it would give you a genuinely dead link, a 405 error page on YouTube, whereas if you went to a video that's actually just a private YouTube video, you'd be met with an actual URL, a page that exists, but the error of video unavailable. This video is private with the redirect to go to your homepage or stay there if you really wanted to for some reason, but you wouldn't be able to watch that video. What was later expanded upon was the URL was indeed a real URL, but again, it wasn't something that redirected to a new item. Instead, if you were to be able to redirect with it, it would go to the worldwide reveal trailer for XDefiant all the way back in July of 2021, which in and of itself is kind of crazy that it's been 2.5 years since the reveal of XDefiant globally. Feels like it hasn't been that long, but also it has kind of. I mean, I remember doing some early consulting work way back, and I got to play some of the earliest builds of the game. But yeah, that link in question wasn't anything to something new, but instead something rather old. So unfortunately, it seems like that theory is about as dead as that link that it produced, which is an absolute bummer for those really holding out hope. But when you look into it even further, again, just beyond surface level, it begins to deteriorate even further, because those dates, March 30th, March 31st, April 4th, a March 30th release trailer and a preload with a first playable build on the 31st for anybody with Ubisoft Plus, those don't make much sense, because if you check the calendar here, that's a Saturday and a Sunday. Pre-launch on a Saturday, playable on a Sunday. You could make the argument that maybe that Thursday of April 4th would check out, but the rest makes absolutely no sense to me. Why would you ever launch a game, even into earlier access, on a weekend? That doesn't make sense and doesn't happen in the gaming industry. So while I'd absolutely be happy to come to this date and it turns out that I'm wrong here at this, at the moment, I don't see any merit behind this, and certainly don't want people to get hyped beyond belief that this game is finally coming when it likely isn't that stated time. So for those those dates, March 30th, March 31st, April 4th, I wouldn't put too much weight on that. Don't get that set in your head that you're going to be playing the game at that point. It'd be cool, but again, just don't hype yourself up too much. Now that said, it still appears there is clerical progression happening. I mean, we recently saw and talked about coins and in-game currency added to the platform storefronts, rewards on the Ubisoft store in the form of Battle Pass tier tokens, Battle Pass boosters, weapon XP boosters, and cosmetic packs with calling cards and weapon skins, server tests and the active status of those servers for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PC, new achievements published on the back end, even an actual update to the application on PlayStation where the beta application for XDefiant was simply morphed into the XDefiant application, dropping that beta tag. But even further, since then, in our last discussion of it, the XDefiant webpage has seen an unusual amount of updates, logging in the dozens since our last discussion, some of those mentioning a Founders Edition, some removing a previously leaked, if you want to call it that, faction detail for Season 1 content, which will launch a few weeks after the preseason and the launch of the game and so on. We saw some updates to tracking cross-progression, whether you want to jump on a PC, PlayStation, or Xbox, it will show that on the Ubisoft account page for you. So moves are still being made in the back end, but once again, whether or not it'll be on time or not, the biggest thing is that we don't have any genuine update. You can make as many guesses and hopium theories as you'd like, but right now there isn't an update. As weird as that is to make a video updating you about how there isn't an update, to which I apologize for the irony here of it and air quote milking it, but like, I feel like this popular theory should be addressed. Now, personally speaking, I'm starting to loosen my own expectations of that March 31st backstop. Maybe April will play it, but we'll see. Honestly, whatever the reasoning, yes, it sucks to wait and wait and wait and wait. I get it. But also, I'd wager that if they dropped it right now, there'd be a lot of things that are pretty broken. So it's one of those situations of would you rather have it now and broken or wait and have a more polished game? And I mean, who knows? It is possible and very likely, given the state of the industry right now, that when the game actually does launch, there will still be issues no matter when it launches. But if they're taking the time to iron it out and make it the best possible experience, I'm okay with that. I know others may not be, but personally speaking, I've got other games that can tide me over in the meantime. I mean, we just had Modern Warfare 3 Season 2 Reloaded. We're going to have what looks like the final Season 2 coming up. They're teasing stuff as of today. Gray Zone Warfare, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, and more. So I'll keep busy, but I do get that it sucks to see. Frankly speaking, though, I still, even though with all the delays, I do still think XDefiant is in another prime position upcoming. We mentioned in the last video that if it would have launched at the end of last summer, the audience that was like super hyped from it coming out of the Call of Duty community, those that were hyped for XDefiant would have a lot of what they wanted in XDefiant come back in Modern Warfare 3. Movement, snappy gunplay, all that kind of stuff, basically everything except skill-based matchmaking. It offered what those initial concerns were coming out of Modern Warfare 2. But that said, they'd only have XDefiant exclusively for a little bit between the beta and the launch, just a few weeks after that end of summer launch, if XDefiant came out then. If you're strictly a COD player looking for something else, you'll have half a year now at this point, seemingly, or around then, before a playable experience for the next Call of Duty, and a few updates in between then, where XDefiant, I think, has a lot more time to breathe and hold sort of market value in that arcade shooter market, unimpeded compared to a launch that last summer would have had, and I'm still excited for the prospect of that, to have them have a lot of breathing room to be able to give us content and to be able to hold a player base. So we'll see what happens, but anyways, that's where we're at. That's the most recent air quote update to XDefiant. But before we wrap everything up, make sure to check out my friends over at Gamer Advantage for what I firmly believe are the best blue light glasses on the market. I've worked with these guys now for 3 years, which is crazy to me, and cannot recommend them enough. They're the most lightweight, comfortable, and durable frames out there, and I definitely think they've helped my daily productivity. Now, full transparency, they are a bit more of an investment, but I do think their vision's absolutely worth investing into, especially if you're like me and looking at a monitor, phone, or gaming for a good chunk of the day. If you guys would like to learn more, at the very least, I'd recommend checking out their website where they can better break down the science, all the specifics of their product way better than I could. But what I can personally say is that I'd highly recommend them. So if you guys would like to learn more, check the link below. And if you'd like to pick something up for yourself, use code Espresso to get 10% off your entire order. But for now, that's what we're going to call it. So let me know your thoughts down below. When do you think XDefiant's going to launch, if it launches ever? Are you still looking forward to it? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding XDefiant, Modern Warfare 3, Gray Zone Warfare, Delta Force, Hawk Ops, a ton of content we're jumping into here that I'm very excited to share more with. So that said, I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.